Hi everyone and welcome to Veterans in Crisis podcast. Today we've been lucky enough to get author James E Mack to come on. James is a former Royal Marine and he's just wrote a book about Northern Ireland, which really, when I seen the advert on Facebook, it really sort of made us interested and want to speak to him. So hi James, you all right?
Yeah, doing well, Jerry. Very well, thank you.
Thank you very much for coming on, especially at short notice. I mean, I only asked you yesterday, so it doesn't get much more short notice than that, does it?
No, you're all right. You've caught me at a good time. So
good,
yeah.
man. I'm glad because I know we've struggled with the Zoom carry on. Happens to loads of people, but we're on now. So thank you, like I say, for coming on. Do you want to tell the viewers a little bit about yourself before we get into your books?
Sure, no problem. Obviously, like yourself, I'm a veteran. I initially started in the Royal Marines, and then sort of late 90s, I went and did what was referred to at the time as special duties. And I carried on with that for the bulk of my career thereafter. So I did 22 years in total, left as a WO2. As I said, the latter half of my career spent in the special duties side was more counter-terrorism focused. So again, probably like everybody of that era, I went through the whole sort of Iraq, Afghanistan, the Northern Ireland piece at the beginning. When I left in 2010 and kind of continued with similar kind of work as a consultant and a contractor. The book side of things kind of came about when I had some downtime during that. So around about 2014, I started seriously wondering if I could write a book, Royal Marine with crayons. But yeah, sort of put it together from there and started from there. And I'm writing my 6th book now as we speak, but I've got 5 published behind me.
Brilliant. So if we go back to your childhood, you're Scottish, not just because your wallpaper, but your accent gives it away. What growing up in part of Scotland did you grow up in?
A bit of a gypsy, really, I suppose. My my dad kind of flitted around from jobs. So I was born in the west of Scotland, pretty rough old area. He kind of got us out there to the east of Scotland, then bounced us to Australia. So we emigrated to Australia when I was about 11, 12 years old and spent 7 years. So I came back to the UK at the age of 19. What moving to Australia gave me that probably pushed me to the military was the love of the outdoors. We lived in very rural areas in the bush and, just a kid running around barefoot, climbing, swimming in rivers and creeks and stuff.
Wait a minute, we're talking about Scotland or Australia here?
That's Australia. A wee bit nippy here for that.
So what was it like, the difference of not just the weather, obviously, but Scotland to Australia?
I think probably what I benefited more for was education. And I was probably like a lot of lads of our era. I just messed about in school, the class clown, the joker, everything. When I emigrated to Australia, I'd gone from classrooms of like 30, 35 plus in Scotland to 6. So there was nowhere to hide. So by default, I had to learn, and I think that's what a kid like me needed. I was a little bit mischievous and wild, but when you've got nowhere to hide, you take on board the teaching. So I think I probably benefited more from that, these small rural schools where, if I was going to misbehave or, mess about, the teacher would walk across to my dad's house and tell him. So, but yeah, I think I benefited really big from that better education, smaller classes sort of thing.
And it must have been a big culture shock as well.
Massively different. Like when we initially emigrated out, went to my cousins, and I mean, we lived in council houses in Scotland all our time. When I emigrated out there, my aunt had 50 hectares of land, and the first present she gave me was an air rifle, and my cousins had motorbikes, at 11 years old. So it was just a complete transition from kind of urban Scotland, dodging about the town and stuff, to just in the middle of nowhere with motorbikes and rifles.
It sounds brilliant. I mean, my nephew who served in the Royal Marines, he went travelling and he now lives in Australia. He's bought a big house, loads of land. He's a fireman over there, and he said, why would he want to come back? It's just.
I think it's an amazing country, and they have a really good outlook in life where that work-life balance we've kind of lost. We're gonna work our tits off and hope for a day off here and there. They kind of look at it a little bit more like, well, no, work's work, but there's good weather, let's get out there and do stuff.
It sounds amazing, mate. I've never. It's not a place I've ever been, like, to be honest, but it sounds amazing. One day I'll get there to see my nephew. Like, well, it's what my nephew lived there. Now my niece's sister has emigrated, and now my sister and her husband they're going over. No, you know, they've liked it that much. I think he's had to sponsor his mum and dad to go.
That would be right, yeah.
Yeah, and then they're building houses on each other's land, and it sounds amazing, really. He sent photos. It looks like a different world.
Good way of life, really good way of life.
Spot on. So you came back when you were 17?
I think I was about 19 when I came back, and lived in Scotland. My family struggled then. I mean, you know, looking at it from my father's perspective, he was a 50-odd-year-old man who came back into the middle of one of the worst recessions the UK ever had. So, and he had no real trade behind him. He'd done a bit of mining and a bit of labouring, but they struggled for one to get work, two to get a council house. It wasn't too bad for me. I just took whatever work I could as a barman, stuff like that. And I think, yeah, I kind of eked out for about a year and was walking past the recruitment office in Edinburgh and just saw the advert for the Royal Marines.
What was it like? Snowboarding and all stuff like that? All really good stuff. Just come in, it's going to be brilliant.
Yeah, that was kind of missing for the first few years, I think. I think the brochure maybe egged it up a bit.
That's it. Honestly, everyone that comes on here is the same sort of thing. I think there was I can't remember what the name was of a certain person who would say, be like him. Say Frank, for instance. Be like Frank. Go on windsurfing and canoeing and all that sort of stuff. I mean, to be honest, you do that, but not as often as they made out that you would do it.
But I did it on a whim, and I think what I saw was, you know, the guys with abseiling and, you know, I thought that looks brilliant, and I knew nothing about the Royal Marines, knew nothing really about the British military either. I'd lived away for the bulk of my all my teenage years. So when I went in to inquire about it, was a Navy guy sat behind the desk of the Royal Navy recruiting office, and I said to him, I'm interested in the Royal Marines, and he went, I'll give you a couple of stickers, mate. And I remember thinking, oh man, you patronizing. But I said, no, I've been thinking about this for years. And I don't know where that lie came from, but it just came out. And he turned around and he says, oh, well, if you're serious, I'll take you up to the bar. And bearing in mind my ignorance of it, I remember thinking, that's more like it. Let's go and have a rum.
Couple of beers.
You guys do, right? So he takes me up to this chin-up bar. He says, right, overhand grip, you can do 18. We bring you back for an interview. And I'd always been fairly fit. But I remember thinking, 18's that's like massive. So in my like best 1980s dress clothes I was in, I'm like bicycling up these chin-ups, and I think I did 12, you know, dropped off, massively humiliated. And he just burst out laughing. He goes, you dozy. He goes, you can do 5, we bring you back for an interview. I just like to see people struggle.
Well, it's funny because I went to the Marines office and the Army one in the same day, right? And they did exactly the same thing to me, but they said to do 5. And I managed to do 5, and he was like, that sound like, but I went to the Army, and the Army thing came out first, which I'm glad I did, to be quite honest. But like the Army so I went away for 3 days, Sutton Coldfield, that came before the Marines did. Like, I can't even remember, because it's so far back, if the Marines actually got back in contact, to be honest. But the Army came, and I was all like, I wanted the Army in the first place, but I tried to edge me bets. You know, I wasn't stopping in Sunderland, that was for sure. I was getting out of Sunderland, whether it be the Army or the Marines.
But I had a couple of mates exactly the same thing. You know, they'd gone to both. They'd gone to the Army or the Marines first, or the Army the second. And yeah, whichever one came first, that dictated the rest of their lives.
But
so they just took it in their way, yeah.
You're right about dictating the rest of your life, man. Like, even as a little thing like what battalion I went in when I passed out. So I'd been put in the 2nd Battalion Light Infantry, but I wanted the 1st. Someone didn't pass out, so I got their place in the 1st. And because I got their place, then I went to Ireland. Then I was involved in some stuff that sort of put us on this road. And it's just that tiny little thing, and it changes your life, isn't it? Oh,
the smallest of decisions that sometimes you don't even think are decisions. You're just kind of pushed that way, and you're on a completely different path.
It's weird. I mean, you see it on films, don't you? But when it actually happens to you, you know what I mean? It's just weird. Like, so when you went in the Marines, you obviously went down to it's in
Livingston we go to,
Livingston. I went down to see my nephew. So you went down there. obviously from Scotland, which is a massive trip, isn't it?
Yeah, well, the way I think it still works the same way as you know, you do your recruitment exams and medicals and stuff, and then if you're fit enough, they send you down to Limpson for things like a 3-day or a 4-day little potential recruits course, as it was in my day. You just go down to civvies, they run you around a little bit, you have a look at the Marines at Limpston, and then they'll select the guys they think have a chance of getting through training. And I was fortunate, I think we had about 15 on ours. I think sort of 4 of us got through that. Then we came back down. We were all in different troops. I started my training in October and passed out 32 weeks later after that.
What year was that?
So I joined up in 88.
88.
Yeah.
I joined up in the 86 as a junior.
Okay.
So I did like 48 weeks, I think. So I was just 17 when I passed out. So life-changing, isn't it? Life-changing when you're young.
Incredible. I mean, for me, it was something I didn't even know I really wanted to do. It's just one of those things. Once it started, that I was just determined. And you know, even my parents at the time were saying, "Where did this come from?" I was like, I have no idea. I really don't. But now I'm in it. I want to do it. Yeah.
I always wanted to be in it, but bizarrely, I didn't know anything really about the military. We had like ranks and stuff, and I didn't really bank on you being tired when you're running and that stuff like that. You know, I really
The
didn't.
simplest of things, yeah.
You know, with all the kit on, because I was only small, I just didn't factor that in. I don't know why, because now I'm older, I'm thinking, why did I not think that? But when you're 15-year-old, you know what I mean? You're just thinking, yeah, I've just been watching Rambo. It's just easy, isn't it?
I think for me, the night before I went to my PRC, I stayed with a friend in Edinburgh, and Full Metal Jacket had just come out, and we were watching that, and he kept saying, "That's you tomorrow. That's you tomorrow." I was going, "No, surely not."
Well, Platoon had just came out when I was in training, so we all thought we were in Vietnam. One in Winchester. So when you did your training, was there a sort of a standout moment? Because everyone I speak to in your training, there's a sort of a breaking moment where you kind of, you don't want to give up, but you feel like that's really your lot. But then psychologically, you can give more, can't you? Your mind can make your body do a lot more than your body thinks.
I think I'm probably not alone. I think I had quite a few of those, to be honest. Probably not at the beginning, maybe, and not at the end either. That's the funny thing, isn't it? It's the mid part. I can remember times and sitting on the edge of my bed thinking, I can't do this. I'm done. That's it for me. Or completely exhausted, you know, with the jelly legs stumbling back into camp. But you're right. Yeah, everybody gets them. I don't think anybody kind of breezes through or cruises through. And I do believe that's the genius of your training teams. They do look at the guys who are super fit, but they'll find other ways of levering pressure on them to kind of level everybody up, don't they?
I think that as well. Psychologically, the stuff like you getting your stuff flung out the window and when they're saying it's dirty and stuff like that. When you know it's not dirty, you know, it's really nice. But now it's dirty because it's been flung in the mud outside. Yeah. You know, it's as simple as that. It's keeping you awake, sleep deprivation, stuff like that. You know, pressure, constant pressure, all them things. When you're young, I always remember thinking to myself, I would never do that to anybody. Like if I was the training screw.
Yeah.
But it's there for a reason, isn't it?
It is. And I wrote an article about it a while back saying that the benefit of this is that because everybody gets treated like that, you all have this, not exactly a hatred, but you all gel together in your, right, we've got to be better or they'll punish us. You stop thinking as an individual, don't you? And it's all for the benefit of the group. And you know, I've seen some of the stuff you guys do with the veterans in crisis. And I think, you know, this trouble, that this adjustment disorder, as they label it, when people leave the forces, I think a huge part of it comes from that they've belonged and they, for you know, the bulk of their careers, their adult lives, they've done something to benefit the group rather than the individual. And then when they come into Civvy Street, they perhaps go to jobs where there is none of that. And then you start feeling a little bit adrift that you're the odd one out, a little bit angry that, you know, this guy's a little bit of a jack attitude, or they've not come in even though they're not sick. And I think that's probably a big part of it, is that group ethos is gone once they leave.
That's what when I set things up, that was me and him to replicate. That's the camaraderie. Because if you ask anybody, they'll say to you the camaraderie and the laughs that you have is the thing you miss. Nobody ever says, I miss polishing my boots or marching around. And nobody ever says that.
Saturdays on Senny Bridge, yeah.
Exactly. Every single person would say the same thing. Man or woman will say, I miss the crack, having a laugh and just laughing when things are really bad. For some reason, squaddies just laugh when things are really bad, don't they?
And I think it's because they're all in the same boat. You know, everybody's suffering equally. You know, whatever course you've been on in the military, inevitably it's in, you know, the Brecon Beacons or Senny Bridge or somewhere equally as dire. But you're all cold, you're all wet, you're all hungry, and the black humour is really what keeps you going.
Exactly. So that's it. So I've tried to replicate that here. So it doesn't matter if they're feeling depressed, they're feeling suicidal. You know, everyone will just have a laugh and take the piss about it. You know what I mean? I'll be honest with you. I've got a violin here next to my desk. So when they're telling us a sad story, I'm just like, oh, well, fucking hell, what do you want us to say? You know what I mean? I don't think there's a service in the world that's got that, like, to be honest.
No, I was going to say, that's probably quite unique, mate. Quite unique.
But you know, what it does is it snaps them out of feeling sorry for themselves. It snaps them out of crying or whatever they're feeling at that single moment to think, fucking hell, you know, he's right. You know, we've all got sad stories, you know, but there's only one violin. So we've got to take time out, haven't we? That's what the crack is.
Definitely.
Anyway, mate, so you get through your training. Where did you get posted?
Very similar to what you said before, where you said where you ended up had a big influence on the rest of your career. I got posted to 4-5 Commando, which is up here in Scotland, and one of the reasons I chose to settle up in this neck of the woods. And even when I was passing out my PTI, and that said, oh, you love out there, it's wild, it's crazy guys. And I start hearing all these stories about how 4-5 Commando was different. All the mental cases get chucked up there. It was the Arctic Commando and everything else. When I got there, it was very different from training, obviously, as every soldier or Marine goes through. It's a huge difference. You know, guys could wear what they wanted as long as it was green. I remember the sentry at the front gate had jungle lightweights and a barber jacket. He's right when nobody cared, you know, it was like, as long as it's green. But the reason for it was they didn't get any visitors. So like all the posh politicians, cabinet ministers, MOD, they scoot over to Plymouth or Taunton, but it was a wee bit of a hike to get to Arbroath. So the boys were kind of left to their own devices up there. But I loved it. I absolutely loved it. And obviously being the Arctic Commando, the first place I went out was Norway for 3 months in the Arctic to do that. And again, just fell in love with that side of things as well.
Do you think that was the best thing you did in your Marine career, not obviously your further career then?
No, I did and again, very lucky too. We had a South Armagh Romont tour coming up. And I was told at the time, well, we were all told, all the guys who'd passed out, they said, don't figure on going. You know, it's going to be a big, hard tour. The CO wants experienced bods. He's already said to the company sergeant majors, experienced bods only. But, you know, a few of us managed to finagle our way onto the Orbat and went out anyway. And that was a terrific tour, really good. And I think, like any veterans who went through Northern Ireland, it holds a unique place in them, no matter where they go after it, because it's such a different conflict, a different set of values, rules. I mean, if you're in Belfast, Londonderry, you could be somewhere in the UK in a deprived estate, but then a petrol bomb comes out, you know, and it's just that massive, weird thing where, you know, your head can switch off and think you're in a normal UK town, and then there's an incident, and it's not. And I don't think the Iraqs and the Afghanistans were quite the same, because you were constantly battle mode, whereas I think Ireland was very difficult because you weren't.
I think exactly the same. What you've just said there about is you could be in a normal city. I remember going around Belfast thinking, you know, it's just like Manchester, just like, you know, any big city in the country. I was going to say Newcastle, but I didn't give them any airtime. So that's exactly the way it felt. And I feel, because obviously the hidden enemy, they look just like you, maybe worse dressed, obviously, and shit haircuts, but you know, and that, and I'd probably never get over that kind of feeling of how people looked so much like you, but they were the enemy.
And I think that's what caused us an awful lot of problems. Was, you know, we took infantry soldiers, or doesn't matter what kind of soldier, but he took soldiers who were trained to go to war and battle, and we tried to make them policemen, then tried to make them peacekeepers. And you know, it just, the whole concept of it was just flawed from the start. As soldiers, you know, if you're being brutally honest, we went there, we were blooded, and you know, you got some experience, but the whole concept of it. And I think that's why, probably like yourself, I have a real issue with these old veterans getting dragged across to the courts, because I look, you know, I had great training, no two ways about it, but I didn't do any peacekeeping training or how to be a policeman. You did your little bits at Lydden Hythe and stuff, but no way did that prepare you for the, you know, the political sensitivities in Northern Ireland and the shit you could end up in. And you know, we're using this kind of spotlight to, you know, get these guys from the 70s going back, and it's massively unfair. You know, you don't see the generals or the cabinet ministers who prepared, you know, these policies. They don't go back and defend it. It's always poor, you know, Joe Bloggs on the ground who's accused of firing a gun that ends up at the sharp end.
Yeah, it's been terrible. I mean, Dennis just dying, and you know, his last months of his life went through torture when he served his country all that time, and then the last months of his life has just been torture. And to be quite honest, me personally, I think he got sold out too quickly. You know, I know people, the average person like us, have stood up for him and stuck by him, but you know, the hierarchy who send them there just sell them out straight away.
100%. I don't think he had any support at all. The same half to Johnny Mercer, the Conservative.
Yes, me too.
I mean, yeah, great, absolutely great. Put his money where his mouth was. I thought that was fantastic. But higher up, no, disgusting. And again, I wrote about this a while back, saying my issue with it is, whenever you're involved in an incident in Northern Ireland, you didn't just fire your gun or shoot someone and that was it. There was stop investigation, your weapons were taken off you, SOCO came out, they examined the scene, a report was made that said your statements, you know, aligned with the evidence, or it didn't, and it went on from there. I mean, we remember the Lee Cleggs and people like that. There was a process, and if you were cleared, you were cleared. If you weren't, you know, the investigation went further. All of that seems to have been whitewashed and forgotten, and they're dragging these people back over with no new evidence, no new witness statements, absolutely nothing, and just, you know, throwing them into the fire again.
It seems like they're just appeasing the people, and they're really that's all they're doing. They're appeasing the people, and they're flinging people to the wolves that they're not really asked about anymore.
Yeah,
you've served your purpose. So now you're right about Johnny Mercer. I was lucky enough to have a meeting with Johnny Mercer, and we discussed stuff like this before he sacked himself or resigned. You know, which to be honest, I can't put him in a high esteem for him doing that. Like, you know, he said he would do that. Boris Johnson wouldn't let him, so he's left, which is, to me, you know, you never see any politicians like that.
Massive respect for that, I think, yeah.
I think probably the whole of the armed forces have got massive respect for him for that. I think if he'd run for Prime Minister, I think he'd probably get it as well.
Get my vote for sure, yeah.
You'd have to be an independent, like, to be quite honest. Yeah. So, do you want to talk a little bit about your books now? Or how you got into books?
Sure. I suppose like a lot of people who read, I mean, I've read a lot from a young age anyway. And I think I get to the stage where, you know, I'd read some books and think that utter crap. And that thing pops in your head as this, where I could probably do better myself. And at one point I thought, you know what, well, why not try it? Because in the jobs I was doing, a lot of the reports I were writing they had to be pretty spot on grammar, English, subject matter, a lot because of where they went. So I knew I was capable of like getting the crayons out and making sense of what I was putting down. So I thought about it long and hard and just started doing it. You know, writing stuff, what I thought, and then I thought, okay, well, let's try and write a book. So, you know, I researched, well, you know, how do you start a book? How do you write it? And again, the old advice of write what you know. That was something I thought, well, okay, you know, military, you know, counter-terror stuff. So run with that. And the kind of books I like reading, the Gerald Seymour, Frederick Forsyth, all of those all kinds of lines with that. So I did write a bit of a book, and I was lucky enough, I was on contract somewhere in Eastern Europe, and there was an American boy there who actually in his spare time writes books. It's sci-fi stuff. But I said to him I was having a stab at it, and he said, well, look, let me look at your stuff. I'll tell you if I think you've got it. And the beauty of him is he's brutally honest, absolutely brutally honest. And he read my stuff and he says, this is brilliant. He said, you can really do this. I'm captivated. Finish it. I'll talk to my agent and see what they think. And that's how it started from there. So once I knew I could do it, I knew how to do it, put it together, I thought to myself, right, okay, well, when I'm an old fart, I don't want to be doing this deploying abroad all the time. And also when you're mentoring and training people, the older you get in their eyes, it's kind of like, well, when were you last current? And I thought, I want something I enjoy doing, I like doing, I can have a living doing under my own steam. And the books, even from that early age, Jer, I thought that's what I really want to do. And that's how it started, and that's how it's continued from there.
So what was your first book then?
So first book was called Only the Dead. And I based that on an incident in Afghanistan we had. So not the details of it, but what would you say, the impact. So very much like a lot of frontline guys in Afghan, they've been faced with difficult decisions. We had an incident, well, you might be aware of it, where, again, the guys couldn't shoot a young child, I think he was like 10 or 11, but he had a suicide bomb and they couldn't shoot him, bombing off, killed a couple of guys, wounded others, and that was it. So again, I wanted to put something like that in the beginning of a book, and just then the impact it has on the individual. So that first book, Only the Dead, similar incident happens to him, and it's about how he deals with his PTSD by just getting away. He wants to be away from people, away from violence, away from conflict, but it follows him in other ways. So it's kind of, I don't know if you'd sum it up, it's like a PTSD stroke survival kind of novel from there.
And then your
second one, that was probably a little bit of fun. I live in a very small village up here in the East Coast, and I thought, let's bring some psychopaths here.
some more psychopaths, do you know what I mean?
I did exactly that. Again, it's got the military theme, but it's a wee village, a stranger's arrested. He's a former disgraced special forces boy, and he's got people who come to bust him up. There's a few twists in the tale there, obviously, but again, it is village cut off, middle of winter, snowbound, no comms in or out, and how they deal, with this psychopathic group that's in their midst.
That's not a life story for you, there, is
it? Not yet. The good fun with that was, it's a wee village, but there's lots of characters, and a postman and builder, and I put these guys in the book, and they absolutely adore it. And even now, the postman, he'll knock on the door, give me a letter, and he goes, I've just seen two men with balaclavas and AK-47s in the back. It's good. That was good fun to do.
So how do you, I know you're doing on your experience, but how do you decide all of a sudden to change from Afghan to a small Scottish village? Is that because you were in the Scottish village at the time?
Yeah, absolutely that. And there's still the Afghan military tie to that Scottish one as well, in the way that I probably write a little bit more deeper than, maybe a Jack Reacher novel kind of thing. So for example, the bad guy in that second book, even though he's a bad guy in a Scottish village, there's a reason he's bad, and it's the demons that he's dragged out from his military service, stuff he had to do, the bitterness at being maltreated by, the government and that kind of stuff. The idea is generally, the first book I had that idea for quite a while because it was a big incident. The second book, a little bit of fun, but equally some experience there. My third book, The Killing Agent, that's more military and espionage focus, where the results of an operation that we conduct in Afghanistan has massive repercussions back here in the UK as somebody comes seeking revenge. So although they're all standalone books and different plots, there are similar strands to them all.
So where are we now? Your fourth?
What am I doing? I'm writing my sixth one now. So fourth one is the Irish one, Sins of the Fathers. And again, haven't spent so much time. I spent 6 years over there, pretty much. Yeah, pretty much 6 years. And it goes back to the days of the MRF, the guys who kind of kicked off the whole kind of covert unit formations before they split down. And then I bring it back to the present, but it's got a link back to the people and, those days. And again, looking at it deals with a lot of the undercurrents that, you know, you and I kind of heard about, that, you know, MI5 are doing this, and is this guy running with them even though he's a high level Republican, all of that kind of stuff just kind of melds in to bring up to sort of 1995.
Well, I'm not a great book reader, right? I've hardly read any books, but when I read just the caption on the post on Facebook on the advert, that's why I had to get in contact with you, like, because it sounded exactly what I would like, exactly from just that tiny little bit that I read. Sounded
even
brilliant.
though it's not like my book, The Killing Agent, became a bestseller. That was a bestseller. It was good. That one, The Sins of the Fathers, hasn't become a bestseller, but it's sold more, bizarrely. And I think because of that, I think because it resonates a lot with people who are in Northern Ireland. There aren't tons of books come out about Northern Ireland anyway. But I think when it goes back to the 70s with something that happens, to the 90s, and then it comes together, I think anybody who was out there probably picks up, oh, you know, I'd like to see this, I'd like to read this, see what it's about.
I think so as well. If it captured my imagination as much for me to contact you to talk about it, you know, within a day, it just shows you there'll be loads of squaddies out there want to read it.
Yeah, and it's doing really, really well. And I mean, even the advert itself, every day there's comments, engagement, tell me more, where can I buy it? So it's working well, yeah.
I'm going to get it on because like I say, I'm not much of a reader, but I'm going to get it on that Audible book.
So it's not on Audible yet, but I've got it coming soon. The guy's starting it in January, so end of January it'll be available on Audible from there, probably.
Oh, that's what I'm going to get. I mean, I don't know how you did get an Audible book because I've never listened to one before, but that's my next plan.
Well, funnily enough, I haven't either. It's just that with the books, it's always there. You need to get them on Audible. It's a big market because, well, the demographics are men don't read. We, as a group, we just don't read. Women read lots.
Yeah.
Men don't, but they listen to Audible. Loads.
Yeah, well, I haven't. Everyone always says, "Oh, you should read," but I really haven't got time to be reading. But I do a lot of sport and a lot of fitness where I have my earphones in and walking and stuff. So I'll be quite happy just to have my earphones in and listen to it. No, I'm not lazy that I don't want to read. It's just it's a lot easier, to be quite honest. So what's your next book about then?
So one I've done after Sins of the Fathers is Asset 7. That's more American based, American focused. And one reason for it was commercial. I haven't broke America yet. I haven't, you know, tried it. And I thought, well, okay. The other reason was I did spend quite a lot of time in the last few years working out of Syria, Kurdistan. And there was the whole Iranian influence there, which was just, well, continues to destabilize everything. But I was just fascinated when I was working there just about how big the Iranian influence is, you know, how evil they are and everything like that. So again, that's more an American focused story with CIA and a Delta group dragging an asset out the mountain of Iran. But it's basically a very fast moving manhunt through the mountains to get an asset out who's got information about a terrorist attack planned for the US. That's doing okay. That's doing well in the US now. They're starting to kind of pick up on that and respond to it. My latest book I'm doing now, which will be out before Christmas, he says, fingers crossed, but I'm pretty sure I'll make it. That's very current. And again, that's to do with the debacle with the evacuation from Kabul in Afghanistan. Again, going back to personal experience, I ran a contract for two units, the Katikas and the Afghan Commandos. So they're the two Afghan Special Operations Forces. And in the years that have gone past, they've really been the only effective forces in Afghan. I mean, I worked with conventional forces over there as well, and they were next to useless. You know, we created a dependency culture, did everything, but these two units were good. And up until the last breath, they were the only effective units there. So my book brings them into it about how they're trying to escape. And again, it's another on-the-run story, chased by, you know, Taliban and Haqqani through the mountains as they try to get to Pakistan.
Sounds brilliant. Honestly, I'm going to start. Is your first one on Audible?
No, the first one to go will be Sins of the Fathers.
Right. Well,
yeah, I've left it this long because, like, I've been busy as hell, and with the Audible, I've got to do a lot of quality control with the stuff they send backwards and forwards. So, but I've got the stage now. I'm not shooting away anywhere, so I've got the time to do it.
Well, I'll definitely be downloading and getting that. Is there anything else you want to get out before we wrap it up?
No, mate. I mean, I'm just really, really grateful for the opportunity. It's been brilliant, but it's been
No,
good to
no,
talk
it's
to
been
you
really
guys.
good, man.
Once you got in touch, and I'd seen your stuff on Facebook before and I had a wee look at it, but I'm a massive supporter of the stuff you guys do, because I feel it's just such a shame that you have to take it on your shoulders. Charities like yourself and volunteers, instead of there being a network and a formal structure that local authorities use.
Yeah, well, we're lucky. We're the sort of the main third sector part in Sunderland, so everyone helps us. I'm put in the
Yeah.
partnership for Sunderland, but I've only been a community interest company for 3 years. I just started 3 years ago. £10 pay as you go mobile phone. Use Greg's as my office. It's been a fucking roller coaster. It's just hard work pays off, and
Yes.
that's what I've got a big belief in, that hard work pays off. And if you're committed and you actually want to do some change and you're not bothered about money, because there's no money in this business, but
No.
I didn't take this business for money, So if you come into this type of work for money, you're going to be disappointed. But if you come in here to be sort of fulfilled, I mean, this is my life now. It's not, it isn't a job. Like, I haven't got hours or anything. It's just my life. I just do it every day. And
I think we see that as veterans. I can't remember how many registered military charities are, but there's a lot, and there's a lot just plummet and fall because they have tried to get in it to earn a living, and it's like it should never be about that.
No, that's where you lose it. That's why
Yeah.
I worked for a charity, and I'm not going to name them, but they were absolutely shit. Absolutely shit. I'd been sort of kind of in trouble with the police and stuff before, and I tried to better myself by volunteering at this charity, and I seen more criminal activity in that charity than I had before. So it was absolutely shit. So I thought I could do a better job than that. And I have by far. I've done a better job. So, would you like? I'm not saying whenever you're in the northeast, or would you come down and do a podcast in the studio? Because we have a studio. I only started doing these podcasts because of COVID. It's been great because I can get people further away. But if you ever wanted to come to the northeast, you can stay. You've got a flat. And have a drink and do.
More than happy with that, Jeff. Absolutely, more than happy with that. Yeah.
We'll do it when your next book comes out. We'll sort of think for next year and come down and talk about that.
No, I'd appreciate that, man. I really do.
I appreciate you coming on, man. It's been a pleasure to talk to you.
Thanks, Joe. Been great. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, mate. Cheers. Bye.